I took a trip to NBA Summer League. Again. The opener of Day 2 didn't quite pack the same punch as Dylan Harper versus Cooper Flagg, but it still showcased two teams in need of pretty big contributions from their young stars. As Reed Sheppard and the Houston Rockets took on Ron Holland and the Detroit Pistons. Sheppard, last year's third overall pick, finished with an up-and-down game. He still has his struggles defensively, I would say, and his shot wasn't necessarily falling, as he finished just 1 of 7 from 3. But he showed some aggressiveness and some variety in his shot taking, getting to the free throw line a little bit as well. Holland was a little better, having a pretty nice game offensively for him with 15 points and 5 of 12 shooting, knocking down a couple threes, and playing the same aggressive defense that's earned him a reputation in the league. He ended up with a technical foul, which is kind of typical of him, but still showing some pretty good perimeter defense throughout. The star, though, was the Pistons' Dennis Jenkins, who was going to war with Reed Sheppard offensively and talking some smack at the crowd. He finished with a couple nice plays in the paint and was really versatile for them defensively as well. One of the best parts of Summer League is seeing young, undrafted guys get to go to work and show off, and I'm hopeful Jenkins gets to make a roster somewhere. After a pretty fun one, I headed over to the tinier Cox Pavilion to watch what I thought was going to be a pretty intriguing matchup, as the New York Knicks took on the Boston Celtics. I was particularly excited to see a trio of second-year Knicks players who I think are going to end up being rotation players this year. That was Hakeem Dadier, Tyler Kolek, and Ariel Hakporti. However, Kolek and Dadier both struggled mightily on both ends of the floor. Both were weaknesses defensively, getting blown past by Boston's guards, and then on the offensive end, just looked lost at times off the ball. There were a couple flashes, including this play from Dadier, but it wasn't quite enough to give me a lot of confidence in the Knicks bench rotation going into this year. A half was more than enough to get a feel for what was going on in Knicks Celtics, so I headed back to the main gym as the Toronto Raptors took on the Orlando Magic. My biggest excitement for this one was watching Raptors first-round pick Colin Murray Boyles out of South Carolina, who was one of the most controversial prospects in the NBA draft. Murray Boyles had earned a reputation as a hard-nosed defender who may struggle to adjust to the NBA offensively, and this game kind of showcased more of that. The forward looked lost at times on both ends of the floor, finishing with not his strongest effort. It was disappointing for a guy who I'm really intrigued with pre-draft, but still somebody who I think could make an impact in the NBA, especially with a lot of defensive versatility around him in Toronto. On the Orlando side, forward Tristan da Silva came back for his second year of Summer League and turned in a pretty strong performance. Da Silva finished with 18 points, showing some improvement with his physicality downhill, driving towards the rim. He could be a strong rotation player next season for an Orlando team attempting to compete for an Eastern Conference title.
NBA just slapped you off! You got 20, baby!
The real star, though, for Orlando was former first-round pick Wendell Moore Jr., who finished with 22 points on 9 of 13 shooting. Moore flashed a lot of the traits that made him look great at Duke on both ends of the floor. Who knows, maybe a guy who could be at the bottom of Orlando's rotation this year. We closed our night out with a game with probably the most draft picks of any we watched, as the Brooklyn Nets took on the Washington Wizards. The Nets infamously made 5 first-round picks in the 2025 NBA draft, the most of any NBA team. 4 of them played, although not spectacularly. There were some rather brief flashes of excellence, particularly from Michigan forward Daniel Wolf and Israeli Ben Saraf. But all in all, especially Saraf, Traore, and Igor Denham, the Nets' first-round pick at number 8, looked pretty lost offensively, turning the ball over multiple times and just unable to really find a great shot selection. The Nets rookies have a lot of potential, but it's going to be a rough year for Brooklyn as they hit the learning curve immediately. I would be remiss, though, if I didn't mention Gonzaga legend Drew Timme, who finished with 30 points in this one. Timmy's a guy who's never been able to make it because of his athletic limitations, but he showed enough promise offensively in this one, hitting multiple threes and getting to the rim, that I think he could potentially be a rotation guy for a team. On the Washington side, there were a couple players I was really excited to watch, including a couple of second-year guys. Alex Sarhat, Bub Carrington showed off some of the shooting and explosiveness which excited Wizards fans for him offensively last year. And Kaishan George showed off some flashes offensively, which could point to an expanded role in year 2. That's without even mentioning rookie Trey Johnson, who is going to be great in this league. He was a firecracker offensively, just able to create for himself pretty much when matched up against anyone, big, forward, guard. I expect him to have a strong career for a Wizards team whose future seems a little brighter than it did a year ago. That was it, though, for what was a pretty incredible weekend in Vegas. Be sure to stay tuned for more from the Broad Street Benchwarmers.